Have you ever wondered, what if Yuji Itadori had Sukuna's full power from day one? And we're not just talking about a little boost here, we're talking about all of it. Dismantle, Cleave, Divine Flame, Malevolent Shrine, Reverse Curse Technique, and the cursed energy of the single most terrifying sorcerer in all of human history. That would completely change everything about Jujutsu Kaisen from the very first episode. But the biggest thing to understand first is that having Sukuna's power and actually being able to use it are two completely different things. Because here's the deal, Sukuna didn't become the king of curses just by having a broken technique. He spent over 1,000 years in the Heian era absolutely demolishing every sorcerer, every curse, and every elite unit that came at him. His understanding of cursed energy is on a completely different level than anyone alive today. So if Yuji suddenly has all of that power sitting inside him, he doesn't instantly know what to do with it. He's still a high schooler from Sendai who just lost his grandfather. He's got the raw material of a god, but zero blueprint for how to use it. Think of it like handing someone a nuclear reactor when they've only ever used a flashlight. So in this timeline, Yuji has all of Sukuna's techniques somewhere deep inside him. But at the start of the story, most of it is locked behind instinct. He can't fire off Dismantle on command. He can't open Malevolent Shrine. What he does have, though, is an absolutely monstrous amount of cursed energy and a body that's being pushed way beyond its limits by power it doesn't fully understand yet. And that changes everything. So the story still begins the same way. Yuji is living his normal life, his grandfather dies, and then Megumi shows up looking for Sukuna's finger. The cursed spirit situation at the school kicks off, just like in the original timeline, and Yuji, being Yuji, jumps straight into danger without hesitating. But here's the twist. When Yuji picks up Sukuna's finger, something different happens immediately, because Yuji already has Sukuna's full power inside him. So the moment that finger touches him, it's more like a key turning in a lock that was already there. The finger slots in perfectly. Sukuna's consciousness stirs inside him immediately, but Yuji doesn't lose control the way the original timeline suggested he would. So Yuji eats the finger. The cursed spirit in the room feels the surge of energy, and for just a second, it stops. Because what just woke up inside that building is not a first-year student with potential. It's something the cursed spirit world has not felt in over 1,000 years. And then Yuji, not Sukuna, just Yuji, looks at it and completely obliterates it without even fully understanding what he just did. And that's when everything starts to change. Gojo still arrives on the rooftop, and the rooftop scene still plays out mostly the same, except this time, Gojo walks into the most insane situation he has ever encountered in his entire career, because Gojo can feel cursed energy the way most people feel temperature, and the moment he gets near Yuji, he feels something that should not exist. This isn't just a boy who swallowed one finger and got a little stronger. This is Sukuna's full power bottled inside a human body that still has complete control of itself. Gojo goes quiet for a second, and for Gojo, going quiet is basically screaming, because what he's looking at right now is not just a vessel, it's the single most dangerous piece of potential that has ever walked into his field of vision. Yuji has Sukuna's techniques, Sukuna's cursed energy reserves, and on top of all of that, he has his own completely ridiculous physical ability on top. Gojo immediately understands one thing: if this kid grows up wrong, he doesn't just become a threat, he becomes the threat that ends everything. But if he grows up right, he might become the only person in history who can actually carry this world forward when Gojo himself is gone. So instead of the original timeline where Gojo is basically already planning to use Yuji as a tool to collect fingers, here Gojo becomes genuinely invested. For the first time in his life, he's looking at a student he actually has to think about. This isn't a mentorship, this is a mission. Yuji still meets Nobara, Gojo still throws both of them into their first mission together while Megumi watches. But the moment they walk into that cursed building, the atmosphere is already different, because every curse inside can feel Yuji before they even see him. The cursed energy radiating off this kid is like a pressure system. It fills the room before he does. The fight still happens, but one of the curses, mid-attack, launches itself at Yuji and gets cut clean in half before it reaches him. Not by a weapon, not by a technique Yuji consciously activated. Dismantle fired off completely on its own, pulled straight out of him by instinct the second something threatened his life. Yuji stares at the clean diagonal cut through the air where the curse used to be. He has no idea what that was. Nobara has no idea what that was. And Megumi, watching from the outside, goes very still because he recognized it, and he knows exactly who that slash belonged to. The mission still ends in a win, but Gojo now has confirmation of something he suspected the moment he met Yuji. The techniques are already surfacing, and they're going to keep surfacing faster and faster whether Yuji controls them them or not. Now we move into the detention center arc, and this is where things change drastically. The cursed energy around the building is still massive, the special grade curse is still inside, and Megumi still senses that they might be in over their heads. But when the special grade curse appears and launches at Yuji, something insane happens. The curse lands a direct hit, and nothing happens. Yuji just stands there. The attack dissipated against his cursed energy output like a wave hitting a seawall. The curse tries again, same result, and then Yuji, still not fully understanding what he's capable of, grabs it, activates Dismantle through contact instinctively, and cuts it apart. That's when it gets insane, because Sukuna, still conscious somewhere deep inside Yuji, was watching that entire fight, and the moment it ends, Sukuna doesn't try to take over. He doesn't rip Yuji's heart out. He doesn't cause chaos. He just goes quiet in a way that is somehow more unsettling than if he'd done anything at all, because Sukuna just watched a 17-year-old body dispatch a special grade curse using his techniques without even trying. And Sukuna is interested, genuinely dangerously interested. Yuji is not a prison to him anymore. He's a project. Yuji never dies in this arc. The heart gets removed, moment never happens. And Megumi, Yuji, and Nobara all walk out of the detention center, which means the higher-ups have a completely different problem on their hands now, because they can no longer pretend this situation is contained. Because Yuji survived the detention center with a special grade curse's techniques firing out of his own body, the higher-ups know immediately what they're dealing with. A vessel with Sukuna's full power who has zero intention of dying. In the original timeline, Yuji's temporary death gave everyone a reset. Here, there is no reset. Yuji is alive, he's getting stronger, and Gojo is standing directly in front of him like a wall between him and every executive who wants him executed. Gojo begins training Yuji personally and immediately, not the casual mentorship of the original story. Real, focused, intentional training, because Gojo knows that untrained power at this level is more dangerous to Yuji than to anyone else. If Malevolent Shrine fires off in the middle of Shibuya during a panic, it's over. So Gojo starts teaching him exactly how to control the output, how to keep Dismantle contained to his hands instead of letting it bleed into the environment, how to feel the difference between his own cursed energy and the reserves that belong to Sukuna's technique. And Yuji is a terrifyingly fast learner, not because he's a genius, but because unlike Gojo's Limitless, which requires the six eyes to properly understand, Sukuna's technique is about feeling. It's about instinct and intent. And Yuji, who has always operated on instinct and whose whole identity is built around protecting people, adapts to it faster than anyone expected. When the transfigured humans start appearing and Mahito enters the picture, the arc plays out completely differently, because Mahito's whole thing is idle transfiguration. He touches your soul and reshapes it. He needs contact to do that, and every time Mahito gets close enough to Yuji to touch him, Dismantle fires off instinctively and he has to back off. Yuji is literally the worst possible opponent for Mahito's technique. Every time Mahito reaches for him, the space between them becomes a threat, and that's when it gets insane, because Mahito figures this out mid-fight and it genuinely scares him, not because Yuji is hunting him down with some grand strategy, but because Yuji doesn't even have to think about it. His body just kills things that try to touch it now. Mahito escapes, but for the first time in the series, Mahito is the one running away, and he knows that this fight, if it ever gets finished, is not one he can win. Nanami, fighting alongside Yuji, watches all of this and says absolutely nothing, but the way he looks at Yuji on the way back says everything. By the time the Goodwill event rolls around, the word has already spread. Everyone knows Yuji Itadori is carrying Sukuna's full power, not just a few fingers. All of it. Every Kyoto student walking into that forest knows it. Every Tokyo student already knows it. And the higher-ups who secretly ordered the Kyoto students to kill Yuji, they're significantly less confident about that plan than they were in the original timeline. Because here's the thing, in the original story, Yuji was strong, physical powerhouse, great instincts, but still growing. Here, Yuji walks into the Goodwill event forest as someone who just casually survived a special grade curse on his first real mission. The Kyoto students are disciplined, they're talented, but they are not suicidal. Toru still rushes him first, because of course he does. Toru doesn't care about power scaling. Toru cares about character, and the moment Toru throws that first punch and Yuji meets it head on without flinching, Toru immediately recognizes something that has nothing to do with technique or output. He recognizes Yuji's soul. This is exactly the kind of guy he's been looking for, so they still end up fighting together, still become brothers instantly. None of that changes. But then Hanami shows up, and that's when it gets truly insane, because in the original timeline, Hanami was a problem, a serious, sustained, brutal problem. Here, Yuji and Todo fight together the same way, but when Yuji lands a clean hit on Hanami and activates Dismantle through contact, Hanami, an extremely powerful special grade curse, loses an arm. Just like that, Hanami, who was built to absorb damage, feels that cut, and for the first time in the battle, Hanami starts moving away from Yuji instead of toward him. Gojo still comes in and forces the retreat, but this time, even Gojo noticed something different about how Yuji fought. He's not just reacting anymore, he's starting to understand what he has. And now we reach Shibuya, and this is where everything breaks open. Gojo still gets sealed. That part happens the same way because the trap was never about power, it was about strategy. The curtains, the timing, the crowds, the positioning, none of that changes because of what Yuji can do. Gojo walks into that situation and gets sealed, and the entire battlefield shifts. But here's where the original story falls apart and this timeline takes over completely. Because in the original story, Yuji spent Shibuya getting brutalized. Choso nearly killed him. The transfigured humans overwhelmed him. Mahito hunted him. And Sukuna got released and destroyed half the ward. None of that happens here. Yuji enters Shibuya and starts moving through the transfigured humans. Cleave activates with intent now, not instinct, intent. He sweeps through them and doesn't stop moving. When Choso finds him and fires piercing blood, Yuji feels it coming and sidesteps while cutting the trajectory of the technique out of the air mid-flight. Choso has never seen that before. Nobody alive has seen that before. The fight between them is intense, but it's not close. Yuji overwhelms Choso before Choso can build any real momentum and ends the fight without taking serious damage. When Mahito finally appears for the real confrontation, it is nothing like their original battle, because Yuji now understands exactly why Mahito can't touch him and uses that knowledge deliberately. He closes distance, forces Mahito to keep retreating, and every time Mahito tries to create space with transfigured humans, Yuji sweeps through them with a single wide dismantle and keeps walking forward. Mahito has no good options, and Yuji is not angry in the way that clouds judgment. He is completely terrifyingly calm, and that's when it gets insane, because Sukuna, watching all of this from inside, doesn't try to take over, not once, because Sukuna is getting exactly what he wanted from the beginning, a front row seat to watch his own techniques being used by a human who might actually be worth watching. For Sukuna, this is entertainment on a level he hasn't felt in 1,000 years. Shibuya still ends in disaster, because Gojo is still sealed, and that's a catastrophe no matter what. But Yuji holds the line in a way that was never possible in the original story. In this timeline, the moment Yuji crosses the first colony barrier, every player inside feels the cursed energy shift simultaneously. The players who have been dominating the point rankings for weeks go completely still. Ancient sorcerers reincarnated into new bodies, people who remember what real power felt like, recognize the signature instantly, not as Yuji Itadori, as Sukuna, and no ancient sorcerer who survived the Heian era wants to voluntarily walk toward Ryomen Sukuna. The weaker players scatter without consciously deciding to, pure instinct. The colonies that were chaotic death traps full of dangerous, unpredictable fighters become something different the moment Yuji steps into them. Every remaining player suddenly very aware of exactly where Yuji is, and very focused on not being near him. Then Yuji walks into his colony. Higuruma Hiromi is a former lawyer who awakened deadly sentencing, and Higuruma, who is smart enough to read situations accurately, reads this one immediately. The cursed energy output alone could flatten everything in a 2-kilometer radius, and Yuji is standing there choosing to talk instead of fight. That specific choice is the first thing that has made genuine sense to Higuruma since the game started. A man with that kind of power picking words over destruction is worth listening to. The alliance forms fast. Higuruma adds the substitution rule using his accumulated points, and now Yuji has a real objective and a real partner inside a game that was designed to make both of those things impossible. Hazunoki's body modification technique turns his own body parts into explosives, dangerous, unpredictable, and devastating against opponents who cannot handle the raw destructive output. Against Yuji, it lasts about 30 seconds. Every explosion Hazunoki fires hits a cursed energy wall that dissolves it before it reaches anything important. Yuji closes the distance while the explosions are still going off around him, completely unbothered, and ends it before Hazunoki has processed that none of his attacks are working. The Tokyo colonies are clearing faster than Kenjaku projected, which means Kenjaku is already adjusting. Sendai colony, Yuta is already there. Yuta Okotsu is tearing through the Sendai colony simultaneously. Ryu Ishigori, Takako Uro, Dhruv Lakdawala, Yuta handles all of it, and when Yuji's energy signature reaches Sendai from across the colony network, Yuta feels it and goes quiet for a second, because even Yuta, who is operating at a level that has the entire colony talking, recognizes that what he is feeling from across the barrier is something on a different floor entirely. They link up between colonies, and the coordination changes everything. Yuta handles Sendai, Yuji handles Tokyo. The game that was designed to exhaust and eliminate sorcerers through attrition is getting dismantled from both ends simultaneously. Kenjaku built this game around sorcerers killing each other. He did not build it around two people at this level working together toward the same objective. Reggie Star is one of the more tactically dangerous players in the game. His receipt technique lets him materialize any object he has a receipt for, and he uses it with a strategic precision that makes him genuinely difficult to deal with. He understands the point system better than almost anyone and has been building toward a dominant position through smart play rather than raw power. Megumi runs into Reggie's trap first, and it is a real problem. Reggie has spent weeks setting up layers that are specifically designed to overwhelm and drain opponents before finishing them. Against Megumi alone, it nearly works. Yuji arrives, and the layers Reggie spent weeks constructing meet a cursed energy output they were never designed to handle. Dismantle fires through the entire setup in a single wide arc, clean, precise. Everything Reggie built between himself and the people he was hunting disappears in one motion. Reggie looks at what just happened to his strategy and understands immediately that the game he was playing and the game Yuji is playing are not the same game. It ends fast. The real problem here is where it gets genuinely dangerous, because Shinjaku has been alive for over 1,000 years. He has watched every type of sorcerer operate across every era of Jujutsu history, and the moment the colonies start clearing faster than his projections, he notices, runs the numbers, and understands exactly what is happening. Yuji with Sukuna's full power was not a variable Shinjaku planned for. He planned for a vessel, a powerful one, but still a vessel, still someone who could be managed through the game's structure, worn down through attrition, cornered by rules he cannot break. What he is watching right now is someone moving through his game like it is not a game, like the rules are a mild inconvenience and the players are speed bumps. So Shinjaku stops trying to use the game against Yuji and starts building something outside it, because the Culling game ending early does not end Shinjaku's plan. The merger is still coming. The ritual does not need the game to complete, it just needed the game to buy time, and if Yuji is going to collapse the game ahead of schedule, Shinjaku needs to be further along in the ritual than he currently is. This is the moment where the what if stops being about fighting through colonies and becomes something else entirely, because Yuji just forced the most dangerous strategist in Jujutsu history to accelerate his plan, and an accelerated Shinjaku is a Shinjaku making moves nobody has seen before. The Angel is one of the most important players in the entire Culling game. An ancient sorcerer reincarnated into a new body, carrying a technique called Fallen that can eliminate any binding vow, including the prison realm holding Gojo. She is the key to getting Gojo back, and she has her own agenda that makes her deeply reluctant to cooperate with anyone. Finding the Angel is difficult. Getting cooperation out of her is harder. She has spent centuries developing a specific hatred for the cursed technique that Gojo carries, and has no interest in freeing someone she considers a threat. Yuji does not negotiate from desperation. He does not beg or bargain from a position of weakness. He walks into that conversation as the most dangerous thing currently walking through these colonies and lays out exactly one option: help free Gojo. The leverage is not a threat, it is a simple reality, and the Angel, who has survived long enough to understand which hills are worth dying on, reads the room accurately. Yuji is not asking, but he is not threatening either. He is just completely, immovably certain, and certainty at that level from someone carrying that kind of power is a form of persuasion all by itself. The Angel cooperates. The prison realm gets opened. The moment Gojo comes back, the energy of the entire situation shifts, because Gojo is still Gojo, the strongest, the ceiling, the wall between the sorcerer world and everything that wants to destroy it. His return matters in every timeline, but in this one, the first thing he does when he gets out is find Yuji, not the higher-ups, not Yuta, not anyone else, Yuji. And when he finds him and really looks at him, Gojo goes quiet, not the playful quiet he uses when he's processing something small. The real quiet, the kind that only happens when Satoru Gojo encounters something that genuinely surprises him, because the kid he left before Shibuya was still figuring out what he had, still growing into the weight of it. The person standing in front of him right now has already grown into it completely. Yuji doesn't carry himself like a student anymore. He carries himself like someone who has already been through the worst thing and come out the other side knowing exactly who he is. Gojo looks at him for a long moment, and then quietly, almost to himself, he says, "You actually did it." That's it. Nothing else, no explanation, no follow-up, no Gojo monologue, just those 4 words. But coming from Gojo, that's everything. They don't have long to sit in that moment because Shinjuku is already beginning. Sukuna is fully out now, fully embodied in Megumi's body, and he is done with patience. He is done with strategy, done with long games, done with moving pieces across a board. He sets the stage himself, out in the open, in the middle of Shinjuku, and every sorcerer still alive feels it the moment he does. This is the fight, the one that was always coming, the one the entire story was building toward from the moment Yuji swallowed that first finger on a rooftop in Sendai. There is no backup plan after this. There is no next move if this goes wrong. Every sorcerer who shows up to that battlefield understands what they're walking into. Yuji arrives at Shinjuku and the atmosphere shifts the second he steps through. Every sorcerer on that battlefield feels his cursed energy before they even see him. That pressure, that dense, suffocating, impossible pressure that has been building since episode 1. It fills the entire ward before he even gets close to the center of it. Sorcerers who have been fighting their whole lives instinctively step back when he walks past. And across the entire ruined ward, Sukuna feels it too. And that's when it gets insane, because Sukuna doesn't tense up. He doesn't recalculate his approach. He doesn't call for backup or shift his positioning. He just smiles, slowly, genuinely, because what Sukuna has wanted since the very beginning, deeper than conquest, deeper than domination, deeper than any of it, is something that can actually push him, something that makes the fight feel real. And walking toward him right now across the ruins of Shinjuku is the closest thing to that he has felt in over 1,000 years. The fight starts and it is immediately unlike anything that Battlefield has ever seen. Gojo and Yuji move together like they have been preparing for exactly this their entire lives. Because in a way they have. Gojo controls the space. His infinity warps the geometry of every attack Sukuna throws, bending trajectories, collapsing angles, turning the entire battlefield into a puzzle that Sukuna has to solve in real time. And every time Sukuna finds a solution, Yuji is already there. Dismantle fires clean and precise, cutting through techniques mid-activation, disrupting Sukuna's rhythm before he can build any real momentum. Cleave reads the difference in cursed energy density between Sukuna and the environment around him and detonates on contact. Sukuna, in Megumi's body, is taking damage from his own techniques being used against him with complete understanding of how they work, and that is something he has genuinely never experienced before. Sukuna cannot find a single moment to settle. Every time he resets his footing, Gojo closes the space. Every time he creates distance, Yuji cuts through it. The two of them are not just fighting well together, they are suffocating him. And Sukuna, who has not felt pressure in 1,000 years, is feeling it right now, so he shifts his entire approach. Because here is the thing about Sukuna, he is not just the strongest sorcerer in history because of raw power. He is the strongest because he reads fights better than anyone alive. He finds the structural weakness in any situation and goes straight through it. And the structural weakness of this fight is not Gojo's technique or Yuji's output, it's the relationship between them, the emotional center of this whole dynamic, because Yuji fights the way he fights because Gojo is next to him. The confidence, the clarity, the willingness to open up completely and let the techniques run at full capacity, all of that is built on the foundation of having Gojo there. Take Gojo out and the foundation cracks, and Yuji is alone in a way he has never been trained to handle. So Sukuna stops trying to win the fight and starts trying to end Gojo. He builds a sequence. World-cutting slash as the opener to force Gojo's infinity to engage fully. Cleave layered immediately underneath it, targeting the exact same vector to overload the response. A domain expansion feint on top of both to split Gojo's 6 eyes across 3 simultaneous threats at once. It is the most complex offensive sequence Sukuna has thrown in the entire fight, and it is built specifically to find the one fraction of a second where infinity has too much to process. Gojo's 6 eyes track all 3, they process all 3, and for just a moment, for one single fraction of a second, the response is just slightly too slow. That's all Sukuna needs. The hit lands, direct, full force. Gojo takes it completely, and the shockwave blows across the entire ward, and then he goes down, hard, and the whole battlefield goes silent because everyone just watched Satoru Gojo, the strongest sorcerer alive, the ceiling of everything, get dropped in a single sequence. For a second, nobody moved, nobody breathes, and that's when it gets truly insane, because Yuji was already moving before Gojo hit the ground. He felt the shift in Sukuna's cursed energy the moment the attack changed direction. He read it the same way he's been reading techniques for months, through instinct, through feeling, through living inside Sukuna's power long enough to understand not just how it moves, but why it moves that way. He couldn't couldn't get there in time to stop the hit, but he closes the distance in the next second and drops to his knees next to Gojo and activates reverse curse technique. And this is the moment. This is what this entire what if has been building toward, because Yuji has Sukuna's full power, and Sukuna's full power includes RCT, the ability to invert negative cursed energy into something that heals instead of destroys. It is the hardest technique in Jujutsu to master. Most sorcerers never get there, but Yuji has been sitting inside the full depth of Sukuna's cursed energy for months, and the RCT has been there the whole time, waiting. He pushes it into Gojo now. Both hands, everything he has. The golden light of reversed cursed energy spreads across the damage and starts pulling it back. Not instantly, not perfectly, but enough. The worst of it reverses, the fatal collapses, and Gojo's eyes open. The first thing he sees is Yuji kneeling over him, hands still glowing, completely focused, not even looking at his face, just working, just fixing it, like it's the only thing in the world that matters right now. Gojo stares at him, and for a second he says nothing at all, and then quietly, barely above a whisper, he says, "You just used RCT on me." Yuji still doesn't look up. "Don't die on me. We're not done yet." And that's it. That's the moment. That is the scene the entire series never got to have, because Gojo spent the whole story being the ceiling, the wall between his students and everything that wanted to destroy them. The person who was always already there, already stronger, already one step ahead. And right here, in the middle of the most destroyed ward in Tokyo, his student became that for him. Yuji pulled him back. Gojo gets back up, slowly, but completely. And now Sukuna has a real problem, because the plan was elegant. Remove Gojo, collapse the dynamic, fight Yuji alone. It should have worked. It would have worked in almost any other version of this story, but Yuji saved him, and now Gojo is back on his feet, fighting with something he almost never has. Actual stakes, actual fury, actual investment in winning that goes beyond pride or philosophy. The two of them push Sukuna back across the entire ward. Gojo opens Unlimited Void. Yuji opens Malevolent Shrine simultaneously. Two domains, overlapping, competing. The conceptual clash between them tears reality in the space between, and the ward around them just stops existing in any recognizable form. And inside that chaos, Yuji finds Sukuna. Not through technique or calculation, just straightforward. Because that is who Yuji Itadori has always been. No matter what power he's carrying, no matter what techniques are running through his hands, he goes straight forward. Always has, always will. The final exchange between them is not long. It doesn't need to be. Everything that needed to be said between these two was said the moment Yuji opened Malevolent Shrine on purpose for the first time, and Sukuna recognized the intent behind it. They both understood what this was. When the domains collapse and the cursed energy disperses and the dust finally settles across what used to be Shinjuku, Yuji is still standing, barely. Every technique he has is running on fumes. His body is pushed further than it has ever been pushed, but he is standing. And next to him, also standing, is Gojo. Sukuna looks at both of them, and for the last time, he goes quiet in that way that says everything, because the King of Curses just got the fight he's been waiting 1,000 years for. If you want more JJK what ifs just like this one, subscribe. We've got plenty more coming, and watch this video next.